Ja, velkommen til denne podcasten av Blåskjermbrødrene. I dag har vi med oss en engelsk gjest, og av hensyn til Mr. Rick Vanover, så kommer denne til å fortsette på engelsk. So, welcome Rick.
Hey, thank you, Alex. Happy to be here.
So, tell me a little bit about yourself. It says that you're a product specialist at Veeam Software.
Yeah. So this is actually my 10th year at Veeam. I've been there quite a while, and I'm on the product strategy team, which is an interesting role. You know, we get to sit in between product marketing and product management. I mean, we're very public facing out in the events, industry events, Veeam events, and we talk to customers a lot, take feedback back to the product teams. I work for the CTO. It's a really great, it's a great role here at Veeam, and I'm really happy to be on the podcast or other, any time that I can get out in front of people and talk about Veeam stuff. So, I've been doing this for a while, and when we get over to our topic today, it's kind of great to see a lot of changes, right? A lot of people heard about Veeam and the VMware space, and then the Hyper-V space, and the cloud space and the SaaS space, and so there's been these great changes over the years.
Yeah, and Veeam's probably been most known for its on-premise services. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it started out with backup of virtualized VMware services.
Exactly.
And you've transited and seem to be on the cloud journey. So how did you take the steps towards the cloud?
Well, the cloud journey has actually been central to what we've internally called it Act 2, like our second act of the company, right? And we addressed it, and actually are continuing to address it a number of different ways. And the main thing is we looked at the cloud journey as not just one cloud or one product. It's a very different type of business, right? So if we look at what we're doing in the Azure and the Amazon space, and then what we're doing with the SaaS space with Office 365, OneDrive data, SharePoint Online data. And, this is just a little bit into the journey. We have a huge internal set of priorities we're going for addressing what's next in the cloud, more clouds and more capabilities around existing clouds and stuff like that. And so that's kind of what we've ended up doing. But the reason on why is because customers are putting their data in the clouds, and multi-cloud, hybrid cloud. These are real phenomena, and we can't let them go in there without a solid backup plan.
That makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think about it, the cloud and SaaS data and these types of, modern technology practices, the challenge is that a lot of times the rules don't change. And I'll give you an example with email data, right? If I had an Exchange server on premises, and if I was any type of company of any, sizable practice, I would probably back up that Exchange server. Now, the funny thing is, if I move it to Office 365 hosted online, I actually probably still should back it up. And we've done a lot of work trying to communicate why, that control of the data stays with the tenant, right, when they go to the cloud. And if you look at hyperscale public clouds about their shared responsibility models, right at the top is the data, and it actually sits in the hands of the customers, right? So we kind of dissect it into the terms and conditions, and then we, want to give capabilities that solve real problems, right? We're not going at the market just to highlight line 39 of the contract. No, we're going at the market to give people the control of their data, to avoid real problems, avoid outages, etc.
So the typical scenario is that a lot of customers think that as long as they're moving to the cloud, that any service provider, your example, Microsoft, will host and keep their Exchange living and going. But the data and the retention within the Microsoft cloud expires, then the data is lost. Is that correct?
Oh, that's correct. I think if you take O365 as it is, I think if you, example, were to delete a user account, Their email data is gone in 30 days, right? But I might be in a business or an industry that needs to have 7 years retention, and if I'm using email as part of my business process, well, there you go. So you can walk into some certain, like, honestly, just a governance of your data and your systems. You can walk into significant governance situations.
Yeah, so there are extensions that you could use within services like O365, but what's the add-on that Veeam provides for those services?
Well, the main thing is full control, and the best example would be, retention of email data, OneDrive data, file data, and that type of stuff. And you could have full control of it. And let me give you maybe a more close to home example of what this type of protection can be. So let's imagine you have, and a lot of times when I say Office 365, a lot of times people think email. That's kind of the one that you live with first. But we also could be talking about OneDrive for business data, right? Because we don't quite support all the services in Office 365, but definitely OneDrive and SharePoint and, of course, the email data. But let's take a OneDrive example. And let's imagine that I have on my PC that I'm talking to you here, I'm doing some synchronization to O365. And if I get a ransomware situation that encrypts everything, guess what? It's encrypted in O365 too by the sync. And if I need to get that back in the if I really need to restore that data quickly, a backup and a restore function are probably the best way to do that, the quickest way to get out of that problem. There's plenty of examples I could go through, but it's kind of like, what are the bad things that can happen to good data wherever it might be, whether it's O365 email, OneDrive data, SharePoint sites just broken, pieces missing, that type of stuff. Putting these systems back together again can be really important as well. If you think about some portability, I know you and I have spoken a bit about migration techniques, and if you have like file servers on-prem and then you want to go to the file server in OneDrive, right? There's a lot of considerations that go with that type of change. And my thought is I always want to provide our customers the ability to have that control of their data to be able to restore it if there was, say, something that does not go as expected. And encrypted ransomware is a good example of like OneDrive's data, and then full control over the email data, and easily reconstructing SharePoint sites. Those are just kind of like some of the things that can go through my head as use cases of why there needs to be Office 365 backup. And I'll actually say, Alex, it's our fastest growing product. We're having incredible success with it.
Yeah, and you also mentioned recently that customers are having a multi-cloud journey. So providing them with one single interface that the backup technician and availability technician is familiar with is also something that's quite interesting, instead of having to learn all the different portals.
Yeah, we've actually gone down that path a couple of different ways. Where it makes sense, we've actually incorporated it into our main product set. But take, for example, Office 365. It's actually a standalone product. So it is technically a different console in Veeam land, but it actually looks and feels very much the same. What it's not are, a completely different set of tools for this cloud, this virtual machine, this set of file data. We've tried to really standardize the Veeam experience, but where we've had to, we've actually put out separate interfaces. But in many cases, this is where it gets interesting. They're interconnected. So for example, today I can back up an Amazon VM, an EC2 instance, and then very soon an Azure VM. And then on premises in the same console, I can direct restores right next to that, which I do for virtual machines. So we have this convergence of consoles where applicable, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And we see some types of ransomware that a friend of ours, a common friend, Dave Kawula, just posted an incident he had with a customer where they encrypted all of their data They corrupted
Mhm.
all of their backups and they reset their access to their NAS storage devices. So how do you address those kind of issues, the next level malware?
That situation, big shout out to Dave and Crystal Kawula. They have gone through a situation. They've been a little bit private with some of the details for obvious reasons because it's a customer of theirs. But this was an organization that lost everything at face value. Monday morning, they started with a call. And I think, Alex, you've seen it, but there was on the monitor in the data center, there's just a decryption contact with an email address and then a code. And that's all that the data center infrastructure would boot up and do. This was by many accounts, even I've been talking with some of the people that were working on the case on our support team, and this was by many accounts one of the most sophisticated attacks I've ever seen because of it, reset NAS devices, and it targeted production workloads, it targeted production applications, it targeted the backups. And these are real risks, but you know what? They won. The Kawulas were putting their backup data in the cloud into Azure, and they were able to have 100% data recovery. Now, they had quite the work to get there. They had to basically rebuild the on-premises infrastructure, but I won't quote their story too much, but basically within 24 hours, they had their accounting and payroll systems back online. And that's actually really interesting because everyone who's been through a DR event, those are actually some of the first systems you need are your finance systems, because you run the risk of losing your employees if you're not paying them. You run the risk of losing your vendors if you're not paying them. And you run the risk of not being able to process money from customers if you're not able to transact, right? So usually the first thing that needs to come back online is communication. And then from there, those financial services actually mysteriously become tier 1 applications. But the Kawulas have done an amazing job, and I can't wait to hear the full story from them on it.
Oh, that's going to be a full blog and a podcast once that's going out. That's going
Yeah,
to
I'm
be
going to
interesting
try
to listen to.
I'm gonna try to get it to Veeam actually as a story. It's just I was helping them out through the week. I was not in the way, right? They reached out to me for a few things, and I made sure our support escalated the case, and because our support has a very specific check down on how to operate in ransomware situations, right? Because if the backup data is toast, then you got a real problem. But basically, yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to hear it from them.
So, speaking of Veeam, and you mentioned that you prefer to communicate and speak and engage to a lot of people. You do a lot of blogging. I've seen your name at a variety of different English publication sites where you've both been creating your own content as well as being interviewed. So where can we find you?
Yeah, sure. So actually, I mean, my personal blog, I've actually taken a new journey. I'm trying to reinstate my MVP status. I do blog over at the Kawula site at checkyourlogs.net. That's my kind of public community blogging, really focused on Azure storage and Azure security, those two areas specifically. And beyond that, I write on the Veeam blog, obviously, so veeam.com/blog. And then I do make a lot of noise, attempt to crack occasional jokes on Twitter at Rick Vanover. And then from there on out, I have a couple of other little long tail sites of guest, posts that I've done over the years. I used to write a lot for TechRepublic or TechTarget, and then Virtualization Review magazine. But right now, the places that stay are the checkyourlogs.net site and the Veeam site.
That makes sense. And what kind of conferences do we typically find you on?
Oh boy. So actually, it's an interesting question, Alex. So as Veeam's grown, I've actually had to contract a little bit the scope of what events I go to every year, because honestly, Veeam has its own full docket of events, and I am lucky. I have a team. There's 10 people on the product strategy tech team around the world that help me cover a lot. But the problem is I've got how can I say this? addicted to the drug, maybe is the right word. I'm a practicing technologist. Yes, I'm the team manager of sorts, but I love doing it. I love getting out in front of people, so I can't stop it. So I'm addicted. But I do realize I feel like I can do anything, but I can't do it all. Okay, so I need a team to help me, and I've got an outstanding team of technologists and analyst staff that around the world are helping me out with these events. But if we look kind of to the left and to the right this year, and years into the past year, what you'll see me at are a lot of Veeam events. So Veeam on forums and tours, etc. And then I think we'll also see me return back to both Ignite and VMworld this year. I missed both of those last year for interesting reasons, but nonetheless, I think I'll be back. I think I'm going to also be making it back to the Atlantic Security Conference in Halifax, Nova Scotia. That's a very interesting IT security event. 700 people show up at that event, which is really outstanding. And then I'll probably also sneak into one or two Amazon summits, and then maybe we'll also see possibly me coming into something like a user group, like a VMUG user con, or possibly even I want to get back into the Ignite on tours, but Veeam didn't sponsor those this year, but those have been a really successful regional event. That's a lot.
Ooh,
So
yeah, you're a traveling man.
yeah. It's last year was a lot of travel, but actually I think this year is going to be a little bit less travel. I already had a couple of trips canceled to APJ because of the virus situation, but I still think that I'll have a busy year for sure.
So when do we see you in the Nordic market, and specifically the Norwegian one for our readers and listeners?
So, a big shout out to the Norwegian market, because the Norwegian Infrastructure Conference 2 weeks ago, that's a really, really good event. And unfortunately, I had a conflict, so I wasn't able to make it. But I do think I want to try to get up there for sure. I've been to Sweden, I've been to Denmark for Veeam matters. I've done personal travel to Finland, so I've got every country in the region except Norway, Alex. But yeah, I do think it'll happen. I just don't have a timeline, but it's definitely on the radar for sure.
Let's do a shout out for Arne Bergersen at Nick and see what can happen for next year.
There we go. Yeah. Well, first of all, I should probably enter the call for presentations, so that would help. But
yeah, true.
when I mentioned the Atlantic Security Conference in Halifax, that is actually, I could probably refactor some of that content. I really like to take a different approach. Granted, it's an IT security event, I actually take a angle of don't let your backups be the back door to your security strategy, right? Because a lot of people put a lot of a lot of security effort on production, but security professionals don't necessarily understand what fully happens with the backups, right? So at the highest level, I've, like I said, coupled that with what I've been doing with Azure storage and security, I could refactor that, I think, pretty well for the NIC Conf.
Oh, that sounds great. It would be nice to watch. What have I not asked you about? What else is there to know?
Well, the only thing to know is that all of Veeam is really heads down for Veeam. We are going to bring the biggest Veeam yet in terms of content. We're going through content right now. I know Alex put in some compelling topics, and we're going to really, we got our recipe right last year, so we're going to build on that, and we're going to bring good, compelling technical content from some of our best architects and product team members. So that's what I've been working on. Probably, actually, when you think about a major event, it's a lot of work, and every day between 2 hours or even the whole day, somewhere 2 and up, 2 hours per day or more, I spend working on the Veeam event experience from about the 1st of February. So it's underway, and that's what I'm working on. And we'll see the V10 launch tomorrow. So it's definitely a busy time here at Veeam.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of interesting things going on, and there's more to come. Thank you so much for your time, Rick, and I can't wait to meet you again next time.
Cheers, Alex.